And when you knock us down, we're going to get up. And on the way up, we're going to bite a kneecap off.
Go ahead and say it, Ed. Go Tigers!
When I woke up this morning, I was feeling pretty dangerous.
You like that? You like that?
F it. Jamar's down there somewhere.
The New Orleans Saints select Marcus Davenport.
No!
Splash Brothers. Yeah.
It's playoff. Keep going, Brace.
The playoffs? Don't talk about playoffs.
If it doesn't fit, you must acquit.
You, Lord, and just thank you for everything that you continue to bless us with, and please let us go and shine a light and share your name, Lord. In your name we pray. Amen. All right, guys, so this is our Start Sit Sleeper Pod for week 3, and this episode, Josh and I are going to give out our Start Sit Sleeper picks at each position. We're going to pick players, and we'll have Clay's picks also. He sent them in, but he will not be joining us, so we'll kind of talk about a little bit about those also. Sorry. But we're going to talk about players outside the top 5 at quarterback, top 10 at running back, outside the top 10 at wide receiver, and outside the top 5 at tight end, which all those positions are primarily stud players that you want to start no matter what matchup. Although some defenses are starting to seem like you want to stay away from them more than others now. But either way, we're just going to give you our top and some of our top streaming options at defense at the end. But these are just some of our picks that we really feel strongly about this week. Also, I want to thank our sponsors, Big Reed BBQ, Automotive Detailing Solutions, This Little Piggy Barbecue Food Truck, and Mimi's Children's Boutique. Thank you guys for supporting us, especially early on. We really appreciate it. And our title sponsor for this pod's Automotive Detailing Solutions. And it's not your usual car wash. ADS provides intricate detailing to groom your vehicle inside and out, focusing on quality over quantity, from carpet and seat extractions to paint and polishing. ADS strives to be Jackson Parish's premier automotive detailer. Contact Matthew Smith at 318-475-9492 to set up an appointment. You can look for them on Facebook or just ask the guys from Dirty Boot Sports about their ADS experiences. Matt does a great job, and he's a big supporter of our pod. So therefore, if you would, just go out and support him. We really appreciate it. Thanks, Matt, for all your support for us on this pod. And first, as I said on our last pod, on our waiver pod, I'm going to go ahead and jump on in and update some injury updates. It's kind of news and injury, goes hand in hand really here lately. First off, Saquon Barkley, which the game's going on right now. So if you had him, it's too late, but I kind of already preluded to that in the waiver pod, but he was officially ruled out for Thursday Night Football for this week. But there's no real true clarity on his injury. But Coach Brian Daboll said that he was progressing well and felt a lot better than they anticipated. Originally, they said he was going to miss multiple weeks, but I think with Brian Daboll coming out and saying this, with them playing on Thursday, not playing again until next Sunday, that bodes well and gives him plenty of time. I think it's a good chance, and also with the fact that they're just calling an ankle injury or an ankle sprain and not a high ankle sprain, that gives him a good chance to suit up for next Sunday. Next will be Tyreek Hill with an ankle injury. He was a limited participant in practice. If you have him, don't freak out. Honestly, it was probably just an excuse for him to take it easy, but he should be good to go after he rests up. Next, going to be Amon-Ra St. Brown with it originally was said ankle injury, but I was reading and heard today that it's a toe injury, not an ankle injury. So someone did call it turf toe, but then I read another article that did not refer to it as turf toe. And if you're not familiar with either or, turf toe is a specific type of injury to the foot where a general toe injury, which would probably be a lot better if it isn't turf toe, but that's what one analyst is calling it, turf toe. Another company's saying it's just a toe injury. Either way, he didn't practice on Thursday, but he did practice on Thursday. I'm sorry, he didn't practice on Wednesday, but he was limited today in practice. We don't have like a for sure if he's going to play or not. I'd keep watching, but the fact that he practiced in limited capacity today does bode well for his chances on Sunday. Next, Derrick Henry popped up on the injury report with a toe injury. Once again, did not specify turf toe, just says toe injury. He was limited in practice on Wednesday, which means there was no designation or update as of today. But I mean, that pretty much is kind of like the Tyreek Hill thing. Probably just giving him a break, letting him take some limited reps, kind of keeping him fresh for this weekend. I wouldn't worry about it. But if it does end up being something, Tajay Spears might be somebody you want to have on your bench if you are a Derrick Henry owner, or if you just got a bench spot to waste to wait for some talent. Tajay Spears is not a bad option to stash. So next to be Aaron Jones with his hamstring. Obviously, he sat out last week. He returned to practice on Thursday. He was limited today. Has a chance to play this weekend, barring a setback. The fact that he came back and he was limited already so early in the week bodes well. But I would just keep an eye on his practice activity throughout the week. Next, Austin Eckler. I mean, unfortunately, man, this is just crazy because he hurt it in the game in week 1. Sat out last week. He's still not practicing as of today. Eckler himself gave an update saying he's day-to-day, week-to-week situation. I don't know what to make of that because that's kind of contradictory because either you're day-to-day or you're week-to-week. But he says he's day-to-day, week-to-week situation. I mean, look into it as what you will. I just keep an eye on his practice activity, but honestly, if he's not practicing as of today, I would not get my hopes up for this weekend. I'd look to fire up Josh Kelly, who did not do great last week, but has a lot better matchup this week, and I think he rights the ship. And he honestly didn't look bad in the game this past weekend, but it was just a tough matchup, and he really couldn't ever get going.
Well, the coach said that there is no timetable, which kind of scares me.
Yeah, that was originally reported, I think, Wednesday. And then Eckler said today, day-to-day, week-to-week, but still, I mean, that's not a timetable technically, So,
and I don't know how many people know, but he's big into fantasy football. So, he hates to miss, for his fans or, and I believe if he was going to be coming back, he would be reporting that, videos or whatever. So I'm afraid it's going to be multiple weeks.
Yeah, and they're not saying high ankle sprain either, but I feel like this is a high ankle sprain situation, the way they're treating it, because typically a low ankle sprain is not this lengthy of an absence. So I feel like this is kind of a high ankle sprain situation, but they're not saying that, which is kind of confusing to me. But I'd keep an eye on it. If you got Josh Kelly, I heard a lot of good statistics about his week last week and him going into this week. So I've got some high hopes. I think he bounces back well. I hope you didn't give up on him or drop him. I know I've got him in like 3 leagues, and I'm starting him in every one of them this week. I started him last week. It kind of hurt a little bit, but after some stats and some people talking about them this week, I think he rights the ship against Minnesota this week.
Well, I have Eckler in a league, and I was lucky and got Kelly. So I will be playing him this week. I actually played him last week too, and he didn't do great. But I expect him to have a lot better.
I think he bounces back this week for sure. And next we got DK Metcalf with a rib injury. Missed some of the game, came back, which gave me hope that we would get a little bit promising report. Did not practice Wednesday. Keep an eye on his practice designation. Let me just double check. I know Dr. Coach Pete Carroll was speaking like it was nothing to worry about, but he actually has to practice to play. Let's see. Was a non-participant in practice today as of 3 hours ago. So back-to-back absences to kick off the week, not a great sign. Dr. Coach Pete Carroll is one of the most optimistic coaches whenever it comes to this. He originally said Metcalf would need a couple days in order to recover. Man, I'll be honest, whenever I hear Dr. Coach Pete Carroll say he needs a couple days, that sounds like a month-long absence to me. But let's hope not. I know he's got to practice tomorrow if he's going to play Sunday, I feel like. So just keep an eye on it. I would not hold my breath. I have him in 1 league, and if I'm not starting him, it's a deep league. I'm going to end up starting Tank Dell. So we'll see how that goes. Next, we got Jalen Waddle, still in concussion protocol, still not practicing as of Thursday. Coach Mike McDaniel reported that he isn't worried about it. I mean, maybe he was just media speak, but Lord, if he ain't practicing on Thursday and he's still in the concussion protocol, I'd be a little bit worried about it because that means he probably ain't playing this week. Either that or he's already planning on him not playing this week, and that's why he ain't worried about it because he's game planning to play without him. So, but that's Jalen Waddle. Joe Burrow tweaked his calf injury during the game last week. Not what Bengal and LSU Louisiana fans wanted to hear. He's still dealing with some soreness, is what Coach Zach Taylor said today. They said he has a chance to practice by the end of the week because they don't play till Monday night. I'd watch his practice schedule, but man, I'd be honest, like this is the second time he's heard it in like a month. I feel like you got to let this mug heal before you throw him back out there.
And he hasn't looked good anyway.
And I really think it's been bothering him. I really do, Josh. I think it's been bothering him more. And, he is a tough joker. Don't get me wrong. But when you cannot perform well enough to do your job, I think that's when you got to really I think you really got to sit back and just kind of let the backup do his job.
Well, you got to think long term and not,
and
next game.
And I know they're freaking out right now because they're 0-2, and they definitely didn't think they were going to start 0-2 on the season. And but I mean, all you got to do is make the playoffs, and then anything can happen. We've seen it multiple times where, I think about the Giants that year they won the Super Bowl and they were like 9-7 or something like that. So I mean, anything can happen.
Who's the backup there?
Jake Browning. He has
Lord.
a total of like 1 or 2 snaps is what I heard today. I was like, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Jake Browning is the backup. So, man, if Burrow does sit, I would definitely think about downgrading some of my players on the Bengals. And I would probably upgrade Joe Mixon, honestly. Because I feel like they lean heavier on the run and maybe even Irv Smith.
And they might lean a little more on the run anyway if he does play, just to kind of keep him out of those situations.
Absolutely. And then next we got up Brandon Ayuk, which another one, if you didn't know, he didn't practice all week. Obviously, he got ruled out for tonight if you got him. If you didn't pull him out, it's too late. There was really no update before I got to this. I just knew he was going to be ruled out because he hadn't practiced all week. So, but it's a shoulder injury. I just keep an eye on it and hope he can make it back for next week, especially starting the year off on fire like he did. Next will be James Cook with an undisclosed injury. Was not present at the open portion of Thursday's practice, which is very strange because he was not on the injury report Wednesday, and so that means he practiced in full. That means this issue just surfaced, which isn't really great news depending on what it is. I know sometimes undisclosed injuries can be like, family related stuff. Let's see. Oh, we got an update right here. All right. Let's see. He missed Thursday's practice due to, this is per ESPN. He missed Thursday's practice due to a personal matter. He missed the practice in anticipation of the birth of his child. Yeah, that's a pretty good one.
Oh,
yeah.
Well, that's good for the owners.
Yep. So there you go, guys.
Because I am an owner of him, and I was worried.
Yeah, breaking news.
Especially
right
after last week.
Dirty Boot Sports Chasing the Trophy Pod. Do not worry. James Cook is okay. He just had a kid. That's why he missed practice. Anyway.
So maybe he'll have a big game for his son.
Oh, yeah.
weekend.
He's probably going to be super fired up for sure. So don't worry about James Cook, guys. It's all good. Next, Christian Watson. Man, talk about a guy that had a lot of draft stock in him. Still, he was limited on Wednesday, and then he was not present in the open portion Thursday. He was limited on Friday of last week, and he didn't play. He was limited this Wednesday, and then now he's sitting again. So I'm hoping that he did not tweak anything or re-injure anything, but I mean, who knows, but he really needs to get at least one more limited, if not a full practice in before the season starts, because, I mean, he's been out all year. So we'll see. That's Christian Watson. Next, David Montgomery, thigh. I mean, no surprise, but there was some optimism a little bit. because they didn't want to rule him out just yet, but he was DNP or did not practice Wednesday or Thursday. I mean, we'll see. They're trying to act like they're optimistic he has a chance to possibly get back in practice, but I wouldn't hold my breath. And if I was a Jameer Gibbs owner, I'd be fired up. I'll be honest, because I think they're going to lean heavily on him. Next,
he's going to have a breakout game.
Oh, I think he has a good. If David Montgomery's out, I think it's going to be big for sure. I think they lean more on the pass, and I think they lean more on Jameer Gibbs. Next to be Jamal Williams for the Saints, hamstring injury. We all seen it, and you know, if you're a big Saints fan watching the game, we seen him go down. They were, you know, it didn't look good when it happened. He didn't practice on Wednesday, and then Coach Dennis Allen said after Wednesday's practice, it's going to take him some time for him to get past this, which does not sound good at all. As far as I know, he didn't practice today. Let me just double check, because apparently a bunch of practice reports came out around 6 o'clock. Let's see, did not participate in practice Thursday either. So there you go. Didn't practice yesterday, didn't practice today. So I would not hold my breath. It's going to look like the Tony Jones, Kendre Miller show for sure. Moving on, Anthony Richardson in concussion protocol. You know, honestly, he's looked a lot better than I thought. I mean, he's run the ball a lot, but it's also exactly like I thought. He's already hurt. I mean, wasn't it the first game he got banged up? Was it an ankle or something like that? And then second game, now he's got a concussion already. I mean, he's 2 games into his career, and we're already banged up. I'm just saying. That's all I'm saying. Anyway, but yep, still in concussion protocol, not practicing Thursday. I would not hold my breath, because the way concussion protocol has been working, it looks like you're out for pretty much a week. And then last but certainly not least, right before we fired up the pod about 5-6 o'clock, we got a notification saying Trayvon Diggs tore his ACL during practice. Trayvon Diggs, that's correct. The star cornerback for the Dallas Cowboys tore his ACL in practice today. Will have surgery and miss the remainder of the season. Humongous blow to that defense. I have them in 2 leagues, and I have been riding that train, and I sure hope that it's not going to stop losing him, but I fear that it is going to slow down a fair amount, because I know Micah Parsons is the engine, but Trayvon Diggs is the driver, and I don't know. What do you think about that, Josh? I mean,
it's definitely going to hurt.
I mean, they're more than just one player. Don't get me wrong.
More.
Yeah, but I think, you know, that could be a possibility, keeping drives alive more. So anyway, but yep, Trayvon Diggs out for the season. Big blow to Dallas, but I would still keep firing him up as long as Micah Parsons is in that lineup. And then that's going to wrap us up for our news and injury updates. There were some other guys that were injured, but honestly, I looked at several other injuries, and they were all just very minor. And they're not nobody that was owned in a majority league. So we left them off. There were none that seemed like they were going to threaten anything, but to keep anybody from playing. So we're going to jump right on into our starts, and we're going to start with our quarterback at start. Josh, who do you got this week that you want to fire up into all your lineups?
All right, I got none other than Captain Kirk Cousins. He is the number 1 cornerback through the first 2 games. And he still is getting no respect in the rankings and everything. He has 708 yards and 6 touchdowns through the first 2. He has Jefferson and a new rising star in Addison, who seems to be, you know, ready to break out. And when Jefferson's getting, you know, the number 1 wide receiver, you know, it's leaving him open some. So you got 2 good wide receivers. The run game has not been very good, so they've had to rely more on the passing. And then they're going this week against the Chargers, and this game should be a high-scoring shootout. I think it's going to be a lot of passing involved on both sides. Kirk Cousins has had 44 pass attempts in each of the first 2 games. That's a lot of passing volume. And the Chargers, through the first 2 games, have allowed the most passing yards in NFL.
Yep, which is kind of crazy.
Which it might be that they played Miami the first week of the season. That probably don't help.
Yep.
And also, Cousins is playing at home where he always plays better.
Yep.
So, I mean, just a combination of all that, I expect him to have a top 5 week again, pushing for the number 1 spot again. I just think people need to respect him a little more.
Yeah, I mean, 344 in week 1, 364 in week 2. Like you said, 2 touchdowns in week 1, 4 touchdowns in week 2. I mean, and I don't think, like you said, I don't think he slows down anymore. I like that a lot. And, ranked 7th. Now, I love Justin Herbert, and I like Tua, but you cannot tell me you don't think Kirk Cousins is going to outperform Tua and Justin Herbert the way he's been playing. I can't believe it. Now, Allen, Lamar, Hurts, Mahomes, maybe because of their running upside, but still, they haven't really beat him this year yet, But I don't know. I just still don't get it. I mean, this, like you just said, the 31st ranked pass defense in the league, and he's ranked 7th. And anyway, so I completely agree there with you, Josh. We're going to move on. We're going to go ahead and Clay sent us his starts. And so we're going to kind of elaborate on those, what we think. And Clay's start at quarterback is Dak Prescott this week, going up against Arizona. And we all know what kind of a dumpster fire Arizona is. They're the 30th ranked pass defense in the league. And last week they gave up 36 points to Daniel Jones. So probably not a terrible pick. And I mean, the only thing is, last week he threw a lot and he was extremely efficient against the Jets, which is impressive. But he wasn't just crazy good. 255 yards, 2 touchdowns, 6 carries, 14 yards. And my thing is, if they get up against Arizona, do they lean more on the run? I mean,
yes,
what do you think?
I was worried about that too. I think he has a big first half.
Yeah.
But into the third, fourth quarter, I think you see a lot of running the ball.
I don't think you're mad about starting him, but I don't think you're, I don't think he's top 10 this week. But that's just me.
When you're looking quarterback, you want somebody that's going to be in a shootout where it's going to be a close game, or even if they're going to be behind where they have to pass the ball to come back,
And I really think their defense is going to be slowing that Arizona offense down enough where they can lean on Pollard a lot more in the run game. So,
I think Pollard has a pretty big day.
But that's Clay's start, and then my start is none other than, I got to spend more time talking about this guy on pods over the last year and a half than anybody, just about, I swear. And that's Jared Goff. Talk about somebody else that doesn't get any respect, man. This week he's going to play. He's playing at home against Atlanta. Plays great at home. He's throwing the ball at least 35 times a game, around a 70% completion rate, and he's got 4 touchdowns, 1 interception. Had 3 last week. He's QB9 so far, and he's not slowing down. I mean,
where was he ranked? Because it was kind of low.
Oh, it was. Let's see. Hang on. Let me pull my ranks back up.
I mean, it was below 15, wasn't it?
16th, ranked 16th.
And do you think any of that has anything to do with Amon-Ra being kind of
maybe? But Sam Laporta and Josh Reynolds have been serviceable at best. I mean, at worst. And then you got Jamar Gibbs.
Who should get more passes than Montgomery.
I mean, Amon-Ra is a big part. Don't get me wrong, but it's not just Amon-Ra. That whole scheme, that whole offense is successful. The coordinator, makes it that. So I think it's the way they run it more than it is just the people. But also, in Atlanta is 14th against QB, but it's skewed a little bit because in week 1 they went up against Bryce Young, and Lord knows we've seen him struggle all season. I mean, the first 2 weeks so far, and in person against New Orleans defense. But yeah, he had a terrible week in week 1. But then Jordan Love came in to Atlanta and threw 3 touchdowns against this defense in just 25 passes. Okay. So if Jordan Love can do that with just 25 passes, I mean, and as well as Jared Goff plays at home, and last week when he played at home, he put up 323 yards and 3 touchdowns. And that was against a Seattle defense that could be comparable to Atlanta's. So I just think Jared Goff has another great week, and I think it's somebody that, if you got one of these guys we're going to talk about sitting, I think Jared Goff's somebody you might could scoop up and start over them.
Well, him and Kirk Cousins that we just talked about are a lot of alike. Both of them ended the year last year at in the top 10, which a lot of people didn't even realize until somebody talked about it or we talked about it. And then neither one of them on a weekly basis or ever get any kind of respect, but they keep putting up numbers, and they're never drafted till the last couple of rounds.
Jared Goff didn't get drafted in several leagues. I was in 4 leagues. He got drafted in 2, and then he did get picked up before week 1 in the other ones. But I mean, he still didn't get drafted, But anyway, I love Jared Goff this week playing at home against Atlanta. Atlanta likes to run the ball a lot too. So that, I don't know if it's so much of a shootout, but we've seen Detroit run the score up at home, and I don't think that's out of the realm of possibilities for them to do that again this week against Atlanta. So, let's see. And that'll wrap up our starts. How about we move on to our sits? Josh, who do you got at sit? Now, I believe I probably know.
Yes.
I got the same person.
I got Justin Fields. Man, huge expectations coming into the year. He struggled. He was drafted to be a top 5 quarterback. I think he's ranked like 24th right now.
22nd.
Yeah, I mean, that's for where you drafted him. Yeah. I mean, and Chicago, a lot of the expectations was because of the run. Chicago has called 1 running play for him. I believe, if I read that right. His pass completions percentage is horrible. He's just not a really accurate passer. The Chiefs have a
lot better
quarterback defense than you think. And so if you got Fields, I would not, even though you draft him high, I don't consider him a must start. I think if you have him, you might want to start exploring other options on some of these weeks.
Yeah, and I mean, and like we were just saying, he's my sit also. So I've got a fair amount that I can elaborate on him, and that'll hopefully shorten us up a little bit on this segment. But to me, not only that, but another thing that I'm really considering is they're playing at Arrowhead in Kansas City. That is not the easiest place to play at. It's one of the loudest stadiums in the NFL, and you can bet money they're going to be there going to town, because that's the thing when Mahomes and Kelsey, when they're winning, Reed, and I guarantee you they're going to show up at that game. But Kansas City's 6th against quarterbacks. The first 2 games were against Jared Goff and Trevor Lawrence, and they're 6th against quarterback. And you can't tell me those 2 guys don't know how to put up some points. So, I mean, if they're doing that well against those 2 guys in the first week, passing the ball, and Fields, if he's not running the ball that well, I don't think he passes the ball as well as Goff and Lawrence. So, and not only that, but Fields' first 2 games were against Green Bay and Tampa Bay's defense. Now, Tampa Bay's has been a little bit better than we thought, but Green Bay's has been pretty terrible, considering the expectations they have. And he, against those 2 defenses, Green Bay and Tampa Bay, Justin Fields has 3 interceptions and 1 fumble to 3 touchdowns. So 4 turnovers to 3 touchdowns, and 3 of them were picks. So, man, and then Ladarius Sneed has been shadowing number 1 corners and pretty much eliminated Calvin Ridley from the game last week. I'm pretty sure that's probably going to happen to DJ Moore again this week. But I mean, you're going to eliminate his best pass catcher. And then last week he only threw for 55% completion. So, I mean, I'm just not finding a good upside here. I do think that this is Justin Fields' floor, though. But do you want to start him at a floor game? You know, that's what you got to consider, because I think what is crazy is, as bad as he's been, he's still putting up 16 points each week. So, I mean, it hadn't been like a top, 10 or 15 finish like Josh said. You're not getting the return on what you invested, but he hasn't been like a complete loss either. But this is one of those weeks where there's a plethora of guys that I would rather start over him. And that's what this is more about.
Pick up somebody,
yeah,
or could have picked up somebody on the waiver wire.
Like, I will.
Like you was talking about Jared Goff.
Yep.
I mean, I would definitely want to play him over.
And I will say, if you can, I would consider highly trading for him, because he's got some pretty juicy matchups coming up in Minnesota, Las Vegas, Chargers. There's a little run coming up, and then later on, Detroit, Minnesota, Detroit. He's got some solid, juicy matchups coming up, and if they get this offensive scheme thing figured out, he could be a real sleeper down the. I say sleeper, not really a sleeper, but he could be a value for trading for him right now. Because I mean, I've been hearing of some leagues where he's being dropped. That's what some of the analysts were saying. Do not drop him. But there's people dropping him in leagues, and I mean, they're just trying to figure out the best way to utilize him, and they might end up going back to letting him run 10 to 15 times a game.
I think you're going to have to open it up and start letting him run, and that'll help the other part of his game.
That's right.
I mean, if he runs, just say 10 times a game. I mean, that changes everything as far as his value.
Yeah. But so that's our sleeper. Obviously, neither one of us are big fans of Justin Fields. And then Clay's sleeper for this week's Joe Burrow. I mean, like we were just talking about on the injury report, it could be that he might not play. He hadn't looked healthy as it is. Honestly, for me personally, injured people are people that I try to avoid on this article, because if they end up being injured and not playing, then you're not going to play them anyway. So, but with his injury, if he does play, it's hard to say sit him, because if he comes out there and throws for 300 or 400 and 3 or 4 touchdowns, that's a hard pill to swallow on your bench,
But he hasn't played well the first two, and I don't think with an injury he's just going to come out all of a sudden and be that guy. And another thing is, he gets taken down hard one time in the first quarter, second quarter, and he's done for the rest of the game. That's going to kill your fantasy.
Yep. And I think that's a great point and a great pick. I hope that they take it out of your hands and rule him out, but I wouldn't.
But he's another one kind of like Fields, where you drafted him so high, you probably don't have much on your bench, so
that's right.
You're looking at picking up somebody. Are they going to be good enough?
Yep.
You're probably in a pretty bad situation right there.
Yeah. But so that's Joe Burrow for Clay's sit, and then let's go ahead and move on to our sleepers. Josh, who do you got your sleeper?
All right, I got Matthew Stafford. Stafford and Cousins are the only two quarterbacks with at least 300 yards in the first two games.
Yep.
He doesn't have the touchdowns that Captain Kirk does, but he does have the yardage. And let's see, the Bengals just gave up 2 touchdown passes to Lamar Jackson. So, I mean, Stafford, to me, can sling it probably better than Jackson.
Oh, no doubt.
He's not a better player, but he can definitely pass the ball better. And also with him, Nakua and Tutu Atwell have played so good in Cup's absence. I cannot believe. I mean,
dude, me too, man.
Nakua looks he looks like Cup out there.
Dude, yep.
I mean, I'm wondering, when if Cup does come back, what's
Yeah.
going to happen there? Because I don't think these guys just go away.
No, I don't think they go away, but I do think a lot of that offense is, I guess you could say, route based, dependent upon what position you are. Like the wide receiver one runs these routes, which is what Nakua is running, is Cooper Kupp's routes. And then the 2 wide receiver runs these routes, and 3 wide receiver runs these routes, and then Stafford goes through those progressions on that order, and Nakua is just apparently such a good route runner like Cooper Kupp is, that he's just making it easy for Stafford, and the stats that he's putting up are just unreal.
Yeah, well, and another thing with Stafford, he's been a very good quarterback through his career. He had a bad year last year. He was injured. Yep. He was injured before he come into the year last year. Yep. He was not, and everybody remembers last year and how bad he was. I think they forgot how good
the Super Bowl. Yeah.
Yes. How good. And at Denver for years, he was great on a terrible team.
Yep.
And this team is a lot better than people thought they were going to be. The offensive line is a lot better than people thought they were going to be.
Yeah. Well, I had a feeling like Sean McVay ain't sticking around just to tank. Like the dude just won a Super Bowl, had a rough season last year. He ain't coming back to lose on purpose. Like that dude's coming back. He might not win the Super Bowl, but he's going to put up a good fight, and I think he's doing that right now. And
speaking of somebody that wasn't drafted in most leagues, this guy, you could have definitely probably picked him up.
He's still available. I've had people asking me about picking him up this week. And I told him, I was like,
okay, on this podcast, if he's available and your quarterback's not doing that good, or you want to definitely pick him up.
Yes.
Because he's just going to get better when Kupp gets back.
Yeah. And not only that, Higbee hasn't even been that involved, which has been a shocker to me. I just swapped out Higbee for Sam Laporta this week because Sam Laporta's been so involved. But anyway, Higbee hasn't even really been, which, honestly, with Atwell and Nakua eating up all the targets, can you be surprised? But he's got weapons galore, and Kyron Williams looks good,
Oh, he does look good. Last week against a good defense, he looked pretty good. Just wait till he gets up against somebody that, he can run on.
Yeah. So, yeah, I think.
Well, they didn't just give away Akers unless they knew he was the real deal.
Yeah. And, but yeah, so I like that pick a lot. And then, Clay has a sleeper pick that I really like a lot too. He was not somebody I picked because I felt like this guy had a better matchup. But Clay has CJ Stroud as his sleeper. And you want to talk about somebody that's been throwing the ball around the yard. You just thought Kirk Cousins was throwing the ball a lot. You go and look and see how much CJ Stroud's throwing the ball. He threw it 44 times in week 1 and 47 times in week 2. That is correct.
And that's a rookie.
Yeah, and you know what? He sat out Wednesday's practice for a sore shoulder. Lord,
yeah, I imagine it was.
Why. Yeah, and but he was back full participant today at practice, so he's good to go. But last week against Indianapolis, 384 passing yards, 2 touchdowns, and then he's been running the ball a little bit. Now he's had 2 fumbles so far in the first 2 weeks, which isn't that great. But if he can just eliminate that, that's an extra 2 points for each week. And then he's had about 3 or 4 carries each week, which is kind of surprising. But
well, you know who's liking this? Nico Collins.
Yeah, and that's somebody that we're going to talk about him here in a little bit. But C.J. Stroud's got a pretty solid. It's not the best matchup against Jacksonville. I think that they've underperformed because they played they kind of had Kansas City put it up on them last week. But their defense is 26th against the quarterback, so not that great against the quarterback. And they're playing at Jacksonville, so you don't really have to worry about the weather or anything like that. And honestly, it should be another negative game script for them, so they should be throwing the ball a lot again. So I think C.J. Stroud's a great pick for a sleeper this week.
We're talking about the negative game script. I mean, that's going to be every game just about.
Yeah, and that's what
The whole-
somebody was
whole
talking
year.
about. He could be somebody that you fire up more than just on some streaming weeks. So that could be a possibility. So, but yep, C.J. Stroud at Jacksonville this week could be a good sleeper. And then my sleeper for this week is going to be one of Clay's favorites, and not one of my favorites, but I've dedicated myself to be emotionally detached whenever I pick fantasy players, and this is definitely one that I do not like, but you cannot deny the stats and the matchups, and that's Baker Mayfield for Tampa Bay playing against Philadelphia at home this week. Now
You made your old boy Clay smile right there.
I know. He's a big Baker fan. And at one point, I thought he was just Johnny Manziel 2.0, but he's starting to prove me wrong a little bit. But Baker is playing at home against Philadelphia. And you probably say to yourself, man, Philadelphia, that just doesn't sound like a good matchup. Yeah, that's what you would think. But that was last year and maybe the year before. Well, this year, Philadelphia is the 32nd ranked defense. That would be dead last against the quarterback in fantasy football this year. And one of them was against Kirk Cousins last week, putting up 44. So that was a big one. But week one was Mac Jones putting up 32. And we can all argue that Tampa Bay's wide receiver room is far superior to New England's wide receiver room, and then almost comparable to Minnesota's. Now, I'm not saying equal, but they've got, across the board, they've got an argument to be made that they're pretty solid. But anyway, neither here nor there. They're going up against Philadelphia at home. And, something else, Philadelphia has a great run defense, which makes Tampa Bay and Baker have to throw the ball even more. And he's got excellent playmakers to get it to, and Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, Trey Palmer, Rashad White does well catching the ball out of the backfield. And then also Baker's got more than 20 points in the first 2 weeks. And I don't expect him to put up any less than 20 this week. And then not only that, but he's ran the ball at least six times in the first 2 games. So you're also getting a little rushing upside there. He hadn't been extremely productive running the ball, but he ran the ball 6 times in the first 2 games. At least. So I like Baker Mayfield at home against Philadelphia. And then not only that, Philadelphia's probably going to have a good chance to put up some points against Tampa Bay's defense. So, it could end up being more of a shootout than people are anticipating. So I like Baker a lot this week. And he's somebody that I would really consider starting over Justin Fields, honestly. So, and that's going to wrap up our quarterbacks. And let's go ahead and roll right on into our running backs. Who you got starting at running back that you really want to keep in your lineup?
All right. Mine is Raheem Mostert or Raheem Must Start.
Yeah.
Great. He's had a great start to the season, along with the whole Dolphins offense. He's had 28 carries for 158 yards and 3 touchdowns, and also 3 catches to go along with that. As long as he is healthy and the competition in the backfield that he's going up against continues to stay banged up, I'm going to ride this until the wheels fall off.
Yep.
He's getting a 73% share at running back, which is a lot. And in the offense that's clicking on all cylinders, I expect him to continue to put up big numbers. And as long as he's healthy, he's always done well when he's been healthy. So he looks about as good as I've seen him in his whole career, as far as health wise. So yeah, I like him a lot. I've got him and started him the last 2 weeks in 2 leagues, and he's done really well, especially last week.
And I just want to say that Josh and I do not discuss any of this beforehand. So all of these duplicate picks that we have are just sheer off of basically what both of us think about these players. I have Mostert as my start also. So I'll go ahead and knock out what I think about him. And a little bit, pretty much what Josh said, but he's the number 2 running back through 2 games so far. And now he gets a Denver defense that gave up almost 100 yards and a touchdown to a lot less explosive offense in Washington. Now, not a bad, they've got some decent running backs there, but the way Mostert's looked and being healthy, I mean, you got to think if they gave up 100 yards and a touchdown last week to Washington, I would like to think that Miami's got a lot better pass attack that's going to open that box up a lot more for Raheem Mostert. And then not only that, this is Denver's first road game. We've been watching them struggle at home, for Pete's sake. Now they got to go on the road and play in Miami. So, and then not only that, Savon Ahmed got banged up last week. He was the backup. Jeff Wilson's still on IR. Devin Achane made his appearance for his 1 carry. So I'm sure he'll be a little bit more involved, but do they lean more on Mostert this week with Ahmed being injured? So I like Mostert a lot too, man. There's really not a lot to like. I mean, and I will say something I'm doing right now actively is I'm trying to trade him. You know why? Because he ain't never played more than 13 games a year. And if I get the best out of him now, and if I could trade him for somebody some people are saying that you might get Joe Mixon for him because Joe Mixon's been underperforming so much. And I'm like,
well, don't trade him before this week.
I'll trade him. I'll trade him right now. What are you talking about? But anyway, so yeah, if you're thinking about trading somebody at their peak value, I think Raheem Mostert is at his peak value right now. And not only that, Jeff Wilson's coming back after week 4. So when he comes back, I guarantee you Mostert will not get the volume that he's getting right now because it's going to be a 50-50 split just like last year, I think, personally. Because Jeff Wilson's been good as well in the past, and we know they like both of them, and that's the reason that they probably did not give up as much as that the Colts wanted for Jonathan Taylor, because they were pretty happy with Mostert and Jeff Wilson going into the year. So I like that pick a lot as well there, Josh. And then at start, we get to talk a little bit about Washington with Clay's pick is Brian Robinson Jr. For the Washington Redskins, who's been actually a really good running back this year, which, I had a buddy of mine tell me, just seen Kittle break loose. He's having a big game tonight. That does not bode well for me in one of my fantasy leagues. But anyway, Brian Robinson has looked good. A buddy of mine pointed out a good fact. Brian Robinson probably looks good because he didn't get shot before the season started this year.
He's finally healthy.
I mean,
I don't believe he was, after coming back from being shot, I know he come back very quick.
And it wasn't like he just
100%.
got shot anywhere. He got shot in his leg, for Pete's sake.
In the leg, yeah.
Yeah. So, but yeah, the number 5 running back so far this year.
Had a career week last week. Averaging
18.5 carries a game. Last week, 18 for 87 with 2 touchdowns and 2 catches for 42 yards. 2 catches for 42 yards, something that he's not that known for. But if he keeps breaking off catches like that, they're going to try to throw him the ball a little bit more. And then not only that, but he's going up against a mediocre run defense with Buffalo. Somebody that we've seen the Jets expose heavily for 166 yards in week 1. So could be, yeah. I mean, I like the pick. I like Brian Robinson. Honestly, I looked at him myself whenever I was going through, but I just couldn't pass up on Mostert right now. He's just, But I think Brian Robinson's another excellent choice, and actually, Brian Robinson's somebody that I've considered trying to trade Mostert for, just because he's been so efficient, so good, but also, he's a lot younger.
I think we're getting what he was, they drafted thinking he was going to be before he got shot. I mean, that just changed everything for him last year.
That's right.
I think he's going to have a big year. I was thinking, they were split more, but actually he's getting a lot more of the run than I thought he was going to get. Yeah,
it was split a pretty good bit in week 1. And then last week it was pretty heavily in his favor. Let's see, week 1. Actually, I take that back. It was kind of swapped. In week 1, he was 61% of the snaps. And then last week he was 52%.
He was just really efficient.
He was, but when he was if you think about it, 52%, but he had 18 carries and 3 targets. So if he's getting 18 carries and 3 targets and he's only in there half the time, I mean, pretty much every time he's in the game, he's getting the ball. So, yeah. I mean, and heaven forbid something happen to Antonio Robinson, dude's going to be getting the ball 30 times a game. So, yeah, I think that's a great pick there, Clay. And I like it a lot. So let's go ahead and move on to your sit this week, Josh. Who do you got that you want to sit?
All right. We kind of mentioned a little bit of this earlier when you said the Eagles' rushing defense is really good. And that's exactly why I picked this guy, Rachaad White.
Yep.
I think if Tampa Bay's going to have a shot in the game, like you said, they're going to have to pass it. The Eagles' defense, they've only gave up 82 yards on the ground in the first 2 weeks.
Yep.
And that's 2.9 yards per carry. Let's see. He's actually getting decent volume. He's had back-to-back 17 carry games, but in week 1, he got 17 carries and only 39 yards.
Yeah.
Week 2, he done better. He had 17 carries for 77 yards and a touchdown. But that was against a very bad Bears team.
Yeah.
I expect more of the week 1 production this week against the Eagles defense. I actually have him in one league, and I'm probably going to sit him this week and just see how it goes. I've got a couple of running back. I actually got Kyron Williams I'm going to play in this spot, which I think is a monster.
I think that's a
monster
great
day.
Great pick.
So,
but yeah, no, I completely agree. I think it's going to be a lot less efficient game for him. I do think he gets more involved in the passing game again, which he did last week. 5 catches for 30 yards last week with 5 targets. I think we see more of that, but I don't think we see the touchdown rushing, and I don't think we see 70 yards. I think we'll be lucky to get 50 yards with 5 catches for 30 yards. So then, you're probably looking at about 13 points, which is probably going to be outside the top 24, maybe right inside the top 24 range, which you wouldn't be terribly mad if you did play him, but it also could go the other way where, I mean, it could get really out of hand and then they just start playing their backups or something crazy like that, because that's a very high possibility with that run defense they have if they can do that. Now, the only thing is Tampa Bay, I think, could end up they could just abandon the run altogether because they're having so much success throwing the ball like we talked about. So either way, I think that's a solid pick there for a sit. And then moving on, let's see, we got Clay's sit is Javonte Williams. And kind of have mixed emotions about that because I think to this point that'd be a solid pick. But what I have noticed is it seems like every week he's getting a little bit more run, and he's been very efficient when he does get that run. So I say a little bit more. Week 1, 45%. Last week, 45%. But he's still averaging around 4 yards a carry. But last week, 4 yards per target. He got 3 targets, 2 catches. Slowed down a little bit against Washington, but against Las Vegas, had 6 targets. Excuse me. And I will say though, Miami is not very good at pass catching running backs. They're actually one of the worst teams in the NFL against pass catching running backs. And he is their pass catching running back. So that would be the only argument I have there. But I will say that up until this point and the way he's being used is definitely not worth starting. He's somebody I have on a team, and I've been sitting him to waiting to see what his production is and does before I fire him up in my lineup. So I like that. I like that call for this week, but it's just a matter of time till he gets it going. Is it this week? I don't know. I think it has a lot to do with Sean Payton's scheme, and we'll just have to see.
Well, I think he's one that people might ought to target,
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Definitely by the middle trades.
By the middle of the year, I think he gets it going. Plus, Peyton's offense, they get a little better in it, and probably you see the team start to get a little better, and maybe even be ahead in some games where he runs the ball more. So I think he's somebody maybe you could target. You're talking about getting rid of a couple of players that while they're hot, and why, he might be one you could,
you
target
could probably
and
get him pretty cheap
try
right
to get.
now. Because
Yeah,
the first couple weeks, 9 points in week 1 and 7 points in week 2. So, if they drafted him where he was going, they're probably expecting a lot more out of him than that. So, I think you're exactly right on that there, Josh. So, and then moving on to my sit, and this might surprise some folks, but it's kind of a later development, but that's going to be Jerome Ford. For the Cleveland Browns, the number 1 waiver pickup of the week, Jerome Ford. That is correct. You pick him up, and I don't recommend starting him, not right now. For one, they're going up against the number 1 run defense in the league in Tennessee. And you could say, well, it's only been 2 weeks. Well, I think they were pretty darn close to the number 1 run defense last year in the league at the end of the year. So they're keeping on what they normally do, and that's stuffing the run. And then not only that, I know Jerome Ford had a really good week after Chubb went out, but week 1, he only had 15 carries for 36 yards, and that was against Cincinnati. And then, so another little caveat here for Tennessee, they have not allowed more than 50 rushing yards this year yet, and no rushing touchdowns. So that already kind of gives me pause. And then they signed Kareem Hunt already, who knows the offensive scheme and the coach and the personnel. So now, do I think he's going to come in and start and take over? Absolutely not. But when somebody already knows that much and he's signed early enough in the week, he's got a good chance to come in and take maybe 8 to 10 carries or 8 to 10 touches away from Jerome Ford. So with it being a tough matchup,
he'll get the passes, I believe. Bring him in. He's going to take some of that away from him.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like it kind of sucks for everybody that wasted all their fab and their waiver priority on Jerome Ford. But it's kind of a wait and see type thing. He looked good on Monday against Pittsburgh, but I got to see what it looks like with Kareem Hunt there. And then it's against the number 1 run defense in the league. So if anything, you got to think that they're going to lean more on the pass, which is kind of scary because they have not been doing well at that at all. So we'll just have to kind of see how that goes. But I'm just sitting Jerome Ford. If I got him, I'm not getting rid of him by any means. But I'm sitting him, and I'm going to see what happens this week for sure and see how they use it. So,
well, I don't think he's going to be the RB1 you picked him up hoping he'd be.
No, definitely not. And Kareem Hunt, I think, is going to have more of an impact than people. A lot of analysts are saying that they're still going to let Jerome Ford be the featured back. But I think
the
Kareem
first down
Hunt,
back. Yeah, I can
maybe
see that.
But
I think it's going to be more of a 50-50 split.
Yeah, or it could be more of like whenever, the old days with Chubb and Hunt, where Chubb ran the ball the first 2 times, and then Hunt comes in on 3rd down, and if it's a passing play, it goes to him, or if it's a running play, it goes to him. And the only way that Chubb was so successful is because he was so good, and we all know Jerome Ford ain't Nick Chubb, so
No.
I don't think he would be as successful or as valuable as Chubb was then. So. I hate it for everybody. And hey, he might come in there and blow it up. It might be the best running back ever, but I just statistically and from what we've seen so far, I just don't see it. So that's my sit at running back, and that's pretty much going to round us out for our sits. So let's move on. Who do you got sleeping at running back this week, Josh?
All right, my sleeper, and I went on way down on the list for this one, but Gus Edwards. So last week, Justice Hill got to start, and he actually saw more touches. But Edwards actually had the better production. He had more yards and got a touchdown. Also, anytime they got close to the end zone, Edwards was the guy that they put in. So he's getting the red zone touches. Now Hill is questionable for the game with what they say is turf toe. So if he does play, I expect Edwards to probably get more touches because of that. And I don't know have you seen an update on that?
I'm looking at it right now. Hill has still not practiced as of today. So he didn't practice yesterday, didn't practice today.
I don't think he's going to play, to be honest.
I really don't.
On ESPN, where they show what the projections are, he's got a 0. He's got a 0 by. And actually, so I expect Edwards to jump up in the rankings. Maybe not a whole lot, but he's going to probably come up some, because I think he was like around late 20s, 30 in the running back projections. I expect him to probably come up to the mid to upper 20s maybe. If he's because you give him 60-70%, get down in the red zone, there's a good chance he's going to score.
That's right.
So anyway, for where he's ranked, I really like his chance this week. And also, another thing that makes me think he's probably not going to play, they actually signed Kenyon Drake to the practice squad, which makes me wonder, are they thinking he might end up on IR or something like that?
If it's turf toe, sometimes that's a surgical injury, and if they have to have surgery, that's an IR stint for sure, But not only that, but they got Melvin Gordon still there, and he got elevated off the practice squad, so he'll be backing up Gus Edwards. But I think you're spot on. I think Gus Edwards is an excellent pick. He is actually a pick of a lot of analysts I've heard today to think have a good game this week for sure.
If you want to know about old turf toe, ask old Deion Sanders. He had his toes cut off when he got older from that turf toe.
Yep. It can be bad for sure. And then moving on to sleeper, and this guy I thought about myself, but Clay's picked Jaylen Warren as his sleeper, which is honestly to me is a great pick, because to be honest, I think he's outperformed Najee Harris so far this year.
I think he did it towards the end of the year last year,
which is crazy to say. But Najee has put up, I believe, 10.6 points, and Jaylen Warren has put up 19.4 points. So,
with less touches.
That's right. With a lot less touches. So I think it's a great pick. Las Vegas is the 31st against running backs, and they're one of the worst teams against pass catching running backs, which is why James Cook ate them alive for 123 yards last week. In total, Buffalo had 178 yards and 2 touchdowns against Las Vegas last week for 43 points. And this could be Najee and Jaylen Warren week. I mean, they could right the ship against Las Vegas this week, but either way, I like Jaylen Warren a lot. I'm actually starting him in my flex this week. In the league that I had Nick Chubb in, I kind of bumped up all my running backs, and I pulled him off the bench. I'm gonna throw him in the flex. We're gonna see what happens, and so I like that pick a lot. And so that's his sleeper, and then we'll roll right on into my sleeper, and that's going to be Kendre Miller for New Orleans. I mean, it can't be a pod if I don't have at least 1 or 2 New Orleans Saints on it for some reason or another, but for good reason. And I'll be honest with y'all, when we did my waiver pod earlier this week, I had Tony Jones Jr. as one of my late waiver pickups for the Saints. Now, I did say, keep in mind that it's for a 1 week only, but at that time I was unaware that Kendre Miller was practicing in full again. It had not been updated yet, and I did see that today, and that's big news, because Kendre Miller had a lot of tout and a lot of praise coming out of preseason before he hurt his hamstring. There was even mentions that he was taking carries away from Jamal Williams with the second team and with the first team. So with that being said, now that Jamal Williams is out of the way, I know Tony Jones Jr. had a pretty decent week because he fell in the end zone twice, but I think making it back, Kendre Miller, I think Tony Jones still gets some workload, but I think Kendre Miller is going to take on that pass catching back role. And it's Green Bay's the 29th ranked against running backs. They gave up 33 points in week 1 and 28 points in week 2 to running backs out of the first 2 weeks. And that was Chicago and Atlanta. Now Atlanta's got a pretty solid running attack, but Chicago's is not as great as we've seen this year. They gave up 33 points to them. And I really feel like New Orleans has got a better rushing attack than Chicago at least. And New Orleans did very well running the ball, honestly, on Monday night this past week. And that's really the only two things we've done well all year, Josh, is run the ball and play defense. And that's about it. And running the ball is questionable. So, but I think Kendre Miller's got a chance to be the more productive back out of this backfield. And with Jamal Williams having a good chance to be out, like we talked about earlier, it's going to be a 1 week thing, because when Kamara comes back next week, it's going to be the Alvin Kamara show for about 80% of the time, and then one of these other two guys, the other 20%. But this week, it could be 60-40 Kendre Miller. Really depends, but he's been a full participant at practice Wednesday and Thursday. Not limited at all, full. So that means he's pretty much back. So I like Kendre Miller a lot this week at Green Bay against the not so great Green Bay rush defense.
Well, if he has a big week this week, the odd man out might end up being Jamal Williams before it's over with.
It could be, and he has not been efficient enough as we've seen. Not like he was in Detroit for sure, which I don't think it helps that we can't protect our quarterback enough to throw the ball, so they're stacking the box. But I think that I think he's been a little underwhelming so far. But that's going to round up our sleepers at running back. We're going to roll right on into our wide receivers. And who you got starting at wide receiver for us this week, Josh?
All right, I'm going with George Pickens with Deontay Johnson on IR.
Mm-hmm.
We could get a breakout from Pickens.
It's looking like it.
He had 10 targets last week for a career best, 127 yards and a touchdown.
Yep.
The Raiders have given up 4 touchdowns to wide receivers over the first 2 games. I actually think this is a chance for Pittsburgh to kind of have a shootout game. I think both offenses end up scoring, and I think they go to Pickens a good bit in this game. And hey, when somebody's hot like that, you got to ride them. So until Deontay Johnson gets back, and even, I mean, but I think this is another big game for him this week.
Yeah, I was talking to somebody earlier this week about Pickens that he was thinking about trading him. There was a trade he was trying to trade. I can't remember who he was trying to trade for, but Pickens was somebody he was trading away. And I was like, man, I don't know about that, because with Deontay out, Pickens is really getting his chance to see a lot of volume. And last year, he was very efficient with what he had. And if he sees 10 targets a game, I really think we could be looking at the new wide receiver 1 on this offense, for sure. So I like that pick a lot.
And Johnson hasn't been able to stay healthy over the last few years either.
Definitely. So, but then let's go on and roll into Clay's pick as start at wide receiver, and that's going to be Mike Williams, who actually has been a lot better than I really thought he would be. He's ranked. Let's see, where'd he go? There he is right there. He's been a lot better this year, or at least more involved in the last game than I thought. But this week they're going up against Minnesota, and 22nd ranked against wide receivers. And last week we seen Philadelphia go for 160 yards and a touchdown against them for 36 points. And then week 1, we seen Tampa Bay go for 15 catches, 135 yards, and 2 touchdowns against them. So, good chance. And then not only that, I mean, like we talked about before, as much as the Chargers and as well the Chargers throw the ball, I think this is a shootout, and I think you can't go wrong with starting any of the top 2 pass catchers for the Chargers, and I think that's a great pick. They're playing at Minnesota. They're playing at Minnesota, so you don't have to worry about the weather or anything like that. And I mean, if Mike Williams is healthy, he's a good chance to go up 5 for 60 and a touchdown every week. So But yeah, that's Mike Williams for Clay. And then my start at wide receiver this week is Mike Evans. Want to talk about somebody that's not getting any respect. I'll be honest, I was out earlier in the year. I was not a fan. I felt like he was going to underperform, and this was going to be the year that he would not do it with Baker at the helm. And I was wrong. But
I think we were all out on him. He was that guy that just hung around and nobody wanted to draft and just And I actually ended up picking him in a league like super late, and heck, he's my best wide receiver on that team.
Yeah. And anyway, so I like him against Philadelphia a lot, like I was talking about before. I think there's a good chance that he is probably leading this team. He's the number 4 overall wide receiver so far, but right now he's ranked after Pittman and Calvin Ridley, which, I mean, you could argue, but the thing is, Mike Evans hadn't had a bad week yet, and Calvin Ridley just come off a 2-catch week. So, I mean, I'm not saying that Calvin Ridley's not, doesn't have a good chance to bounce back this week against Houston. But Mike Evans is going up against the 28th ranked defense against wide receivers that just gave up buku of points. Last week against Minnesota, Philadelphia gave up 265 yards and 2 touchdowns for almost 60 points. And like we were talking about earlier, whenever I was talking about Baker Mayfield, the pass catchers for Tampa Bay could be just a little less than Minnesota's, because you could arguably say Mike Evans and Chris Godwin is equal to a Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison right now, just because of Jordan Addison's inexperience. Now, obviously, Justin Jefferson's the best of that group, but as a total cumulative of talent between Chris Godwin and Mike Evans, I mean, we could see another week like that. And then in week 1, they gave up 137 yards and 2 touchdowns to New England. I mean, we're talking about Kendrick Bourne lit the world on fire, for Pete's sake. And we don't think Mike Evans and Chris Godwin's going to go to town on that Philadelphia defense at home. So anyway, I like Mike Evans a lot this week, as you can tell, just because, I mean, the stats don't lie,
Well, speaking of a guy that is going to have a big week this week, Deebo Samuel's just caught a touchdown. He's got 6 catches, 129 yards, and a touchdown.
Yep.
With Ayuk not in the lineup.
Yep. And I think we're going to see a lot of that this year. I think it's going to be an either or for them this year a lot. I think it's going to be Ayuk or it's going to be Deebo. And obviously with Ayuk out, Deebo is killing it right now. And Brock Purdy, that was a pretty ball. Coming from Brock Purdy right there on a back shoulder throw. So,
well, Deebo had just got hurt, earlier in the quarter and came back and caught this big touchdown.
Yeah, that was that faux injury, because they're up 30-12.
He was tired.
So, yeah, that was. But let's keep moving on. That was my start at wide receiver. Let's move on to our sits. Who you sitting at wide receiver there, Josh?
All right, and I hate to say this because I have him in a league, and I had high expectations for this guy, but I'm going with Garrett Wilson. If not for probably the best catch of the year in week 1 and a long touchdown catch last week, his production would be pretty bad. And those big plays, I hate to say it, but are probably not going to continue. I mean, it's hard to just continue to get those big plays, although he is the guy that could do it.
Yep.
Pair that with a quarterback, Zach Wilson, who has not been good. He had 3 interceptions last week. I mean, he is not the answer. I am so surprised they haven't tried to make a move, because they have the team and the talent to go a long ways, but the quarterback is I'm afraid going to hold them back. Let's see. Yeah. Throw also in that they're playing against a Bill Belichick defense, which is going to do all they can to keep the other team stars from going off. They have made Zach Wilson look terrible in the last 3 games against him. I mean, he has been bad. The talent is definitely there with this guy, but I think the quarterback play is going to hold him back for the rest of the season.
I'm still waiting
unless
on
they
them.
make a move.
I'm still waiting on it. I don't see how you don't, Josh. I really don't. Like,
you have to.
They are
Too good of a team not to.
They are missing that one key piece, and they don't even. I mean, this is one of those teams, like the Baltimore Ravens that won with what's his name,
Brad Johnson.
No, not but that was Tampa Bay that won with Brad Johnson.
That was Tampa Bay.
Similar,
same thing.
Similar. Yeah. But then Baltimore had that guy. He's an analyst for Fox. He coaches high school football now. Anyway, but they won with him, and it's just one of those teams that can win with a mediocre quarterback. They just need a game manager that's not going to turn the ball over. And unfortunately,
Zach Wilson's been mediocre.
Is not a guy that will not turn the ball over. So I think they got to make a move. Honestly.
You know who I think would be a fit for him, and I would hate to lose him because I think he's one of the best backups. But Jameis Winston would
absolutely
be somebody that can step in. He's been around the league. He knows a lot of different
and
playbooks.
He can chunk the ball. But I'll tell you, if they want to cough up a couple draft pick or two, be more than willing to sell him. Famous Jameis. Heck, they like that Hayner kid anyway, even though he got suspended for 6 games for PEDs. But they like him anyway. So,
what happened? What about the guy that they had last year, the Jets, and he had like 3 or 4 big weeks? Was it White?
Mike White. Yep, he's not
Where's
there
he
anymore. Let me see. I read
he's got to be better than Wilson.
That's what I thought too, man. But he is not there. He is in Miami. Backing up Tua.
Really? I mean, Wilson looks the part, but he just doesn't have it.
I agree. So, but yeah, can't fault you there. I've got him in one league, and I'm going to start him at my flex, just because for the sheer chance that he busts another
big play.
One.
Yeah.
Yep. But also, like, as an offensive coordinator, how do you not start screenplays for him? Anything to get him the ball.
Get the ball in his hands.
Anything. Like we've seen it with so many other star players, just getting them the ball and let them make plays. Because, I mean, for Pete's sake, Zach Wilson can't screw up a screenplay. Just throw the ball out. That's all you got to do. Throw it out.
Well, 2 years ago when Deebo Samuels looked like the best player in football, that's what they were doing. Every time they would just find ways to get it in his hands.
And I feel like if they can figure that out or start doing that, that's going to be you definitely want Garrett Wilson in your lineup. Now, will they do that this week? Probably not against New England, like you said. I think it's going to be more of the same. But I'm hoping they do because, like you said, I've got him and you got him. But
if you if you picked him, you got to start him almost. I mean,
I could start Cortland Sutton over him, but
I don't like him this week with Jerry Jeudy coming back.
I don't either. And every time Jeudy plays, he's not that great. And but anyway, so I'm starting him. I'm not liking it. I like your pick to sit him. If you got the depth to do it, I definitely recommend it. But let's just hope they figure it out sooner rather than later. So let's go ahead and move on to Clay's sit. And it's been a popular sit the last several weeks, and it probably will continue. Honestly, I didn't pick him because I knew one of you guys would pick him. That way we could diversify a little bit, and that's going to be DeAndre Hopkins for Tennessee. What else is there to say? They don't throw the ball a ton. And DeAndre Hopkins, not only that, he's banged up. Let's see. Let me pull up his injury. Let's see. Ankle injury, limited participant at practice, which means he practiced, so he's probably good. But still,
I feel like he's going to be limited every week, though, because of his age and history.
Yeah, but last week, 5 targets, 4 catches for 40 yards against the Chargers. Okay, now that's with Treylon Burks back. So does Treylon Burks have a lot more effect on DeAndre Hopkins than we thought? Because Treylon Burks, oh, heck, I didn't know Burks played in week 1. That's interesting. Okay. But anyway, Treylon Burks last week, 4 targets, 3 catches for 76 yards. But, I mean, it's just like what we've been talking about the whole time. They just don't throw the ball a lot. And, I mean, and Hopkins is not as dynamic as he used to be. So, and Tannehill's never been
And
one to
Tannehill's
lock on a wide receiver. So, yeah, I completely agree with Clay there on that one. And then my sit at wide receiver this week was strictly it was a lot based on the guy that just tore his ACL before the season started, and that is Marquise Brown for Arizona. Now, he could probably still be a sit because he's a wide receiver for Arizona and they're going up against the Dallas Cowboys defense. But it sounded a lot better whenever Trayvon Diggs was going to be on at cornerback for Dallas. But up until this point so far, Dallas has the number 1 defense in the league against pass catchers, and they've only allowed 10 catches all year. That is correct. 10 catches all year.
Wow, I didn't realize that.
Yes, they've allowed 10 catches through 2 games and 1 touchdown. And you know what that touchdown pass was, Josh, that you just talked about? That was the one to Garrett Wilson, the amazing catch. Yeah. So that's all that Dallas defense has allowed to pass catchers this year so far. And honestly, Brown has been okay, but he's got a rookie quarterback going up against Micah Parsons' pass rush. And you've kind of had mixed reviews from Marquise Brown this year. He had a subpar week 1 against Washington. And then he had 3 for 28 on 5 targets against them. And then this past week, he had a little bit better of a week, but still, like, you're going up against the number 1 pass defense, and you got a rookie quarterback, and it's Arizona. You know, they're not trying to win, really. Let's be honest. So I don't like Marquise Brown at all. If you got him, I think you sit him, and honestly, he might be somebody you think about sitting. Unless you got to start playing them in bye weeks. So that's going to wrap up the sits. Let's move on to our sleeper wide receivers. Who you got at sleeper wide receiver there, Josh?
All right. Well, I got Jordan Addison. We'll go back to this Viking Chargers game. The total is set really high because they're expecting lots of points, a shootout, and I believe there's plenty to go around, and I think he gets some of it. I think this game, we did all about this game. Jefferson's going to get the number 1 cornerback. That's going to leave him with the number 2 or 3. And we know that they're going to pass the ball close to 40 times at least. So he's got to get some targets and some catches, and I wouldn't doubt if he didn't get a touchdown this week.
Yep, I think it's a great pick. We talked about we like all pass catchers in that game pretty much, and I think that's an excellent pick, especially with Kirk Cousins throwing the ball that's been looking like he's on fire here lately. So excellent pick. And then for a sleeper for Clay's pick, he's got Robert Woods. He's the yin to the yang of my sleeper pick, Nico Collins. But C.J. Stroud's throwing the ball 45 times a game. And if he's throwing the ball 45 times a game, that's a lot of volume to go around. And like we talked about, they're going up against Jacksonville this week. And I can read off some of the stats because I've got Nico Collins as my sleeper. But Jacksonville is, believed, 15th against wide receiver. But last week, they gave up 15 catches and 200 yards and a touchdown against Kansas City. And we all know that wide receiver room has been far less than stellar. And now I do know it's Kirk Cousins. I do know it's Pat Mahomes and Kelsey, but still 200 yards and touchdown last week. And they really didn't even have to throw the ball a lot. So that means Jacksonville gave up a lot in a short amount of time because Kansas City was leading that game pretty much from the get-go, from what I understand, and their defense was holding Jacksonville to 9 points. So Stroud's throwing the ball 45 times a game, and that's a lot of volume to go around. I think that's a great pick. Not only that, Robert Woods, he's been pretty efficient this year so far compared to last year. targeted 10 times in week 1 against Baltimore, 6 catches for 57 yards. And then last week, targeted 9 times, 6 catches for 74 yards. No touchdowns, but he's in on anywhere from about 80% of the games. 80% of the snaps this year. And I think he could be a solid flex option, and at least maybe even a wide receiver too if you're in a bind with an injury or something. So yeah, I like that pick a lot there, Clay. And then, like I said, that goes right into my sleeper, who's Nico Collins. Now, Josh alluded to him a little bit earlier, but a lot of people don't realize Nico Collins is the number 7 wide receiver in fantasy so far this year. And he's number 5 in receiving yards so far this year. Total receiving yards, he's number 5, which is pretty crazy to think for the Houston Texans. And then they're going up against Jacksonville, like I said. Not only that, but Nico Collins. So CJ Stroud has thrown the ball about 90 times. About 90 times. And of those 90 times, Nico Collins has been targeted around 25% of those times. Okay, that's a 25% target share. That's crazy, okay? But honestly, that's all they've done this year is pass the ball a lot, and that's all they've done well. They've been struggling to run the ball, as you probably know if you have Dameon Pierce like I do on a couple teams. And I think that they keep it going this week against Jacksonville, because I think Jacksonville is going to be able to score and move the ball, and I think Houston's going to have to pass the ball to keep up. So,
well, it says a lot of C.J. Stroud what they think of him to let a rookie come in and throw the ball that many times. You rarely see that with a rookie. They usually ease them in.
Yeah, like Bryce Young. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but I like Nico Collins a lot as a sleeper. So, and that's going to round out our wide receivers. And we're going to jump right on into the black hole of fantasy football, that being the tight end segment, because there's not much there to talk about, and it's pretty dark and empty. But we're going to start with our start at tight end. Who do you got, Josh?
All right, my start is actually a guy that I could probably put as a sleeper for where he's ranked, but he's the number 2 tight end after the first 2 games of the year. He's had 11 receptions, 108 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Mm-hmm. Yet he's still at around 15 in the rankings, which I do not understand. He's on, New England, which, loves in the past to use tight ends, and it looks like they're going to use this one. The Jets have given up 2 touchdowns to tight ends over the first 2 games. Mac Jones seems to be looking for him. Yeah. He's hot right now. So, when a player gets hot, you got to use them as much as you can.
Well, it looks like, and I completely agree. I got a little sidebar here, Josh. Looks like New York is conceding, and Tyrod Taylor has come in for the New York Giants at quarterback, and seems to be running their 2-minute offenses. They're down 30-12. So
New York Giants has got some work to do. I can tell you, this is not the Giants thing we saw last year.
No, definitely not. And they look like they pulled most of their starters from offense, as far as Darren Waller's not out there, no Breida. So
although they are playing probably the Super Bowl favorites right now.
Yeah, definitely.
In San Francisco. They look like the best team in the league right now.
With Trayvon Diggs being lost for Dallas, arguably the best defense in the league, it would have been between those two for sure for me. And with Diggs being out, I think that it gives the favorite to the 49ers for sure. But anyway, moving on. I like that pick at tight end. I've got Hunter Henry in a league, and I'm actually I sat him for Darren Waller, and I'm regretting that immediately after tonight that Darren Waller only put up 5 points for me. And I just figured if anybody was going to put up any points for the Giants, it was going to be Darren Waller. And that was not the case, because nobody put up any points for the Giants. Matt Breida had a touchdown, and that was about it. I don't even know if he had 10 points, and he had a touchdown. So, I like Hunter Henry a lot. He's done it back-to-back weeks. And like you just said, not really getting any respect. I think it's because Mike Gesicki's there. But honestly, Mac Jones is looking for Hunter Henry, especially in the red zone. 6 targets, 5 catches for 56 yards and a touchdown week 1 against Philadelphia. And then last week, 7 targets, 6 catches for 52 yards and a touchdown. So, even if 5 and 6 catches for 50 yards is his baseline, I'll take that,
From your tight end position, you love those numbers.
Yeah, no doubt. I took that tonight in a heartbeat. I like that pick a lot. And then Clay has, as his start at tight end, Clay is starting Sam Laporta, who I am a big fan of. I was a big fan of him coming in, and I was worried about him being used as a blocker a little bit more than, kind of like they did to us with Hawkinson last year and the year before. They kind of kept him in the block because their offensive line was so weak. But I guess they've improved so much. They've got Sam Laporta coming out, and he's the number 4 fantasy tight end so far this year. 5 targets, 5 catches for 39 yards week 1, and then last week 6 targets for 5 catches for 63 yards. It looks very good catching the ball. And then now he goes up against an Atlanta defense that is 21st against tight ends, and in week 1 gave up 16 points, 6 catches, 43 yards, and a touchdown to Carolina tight end, who honestly most people don't even know the name of. And give me 1 second, let me pull it up. Hayden Hurst, which he didn't have much. He didn't have much going for him last week against the Saints, but gave up good. And you could argue that Sam Laporta is far more athletic, and Hayden Hurst is a great athletic tight end. But I'm telling you, if you hadn't seen Sam Laporta catch the ball and run after the ball, he is an athlete. And I think he's got a good chance to do something this week against Atlanta, and I like that pick a lot from Clay. And then my start at tight end is gonna be a guy that's been the number 1 tight end in fantasy in the past, and it's been a hot minute since then. But that's gonna be Zach Ertz for Arizona. And you're probably thinking, man, you're going to start an Arizona player against this Dallas defense. Well, that's because the only way you can move the ball against the Dallas defense is passing to your tight end, because they're the 15th ranked defense against the tight end currently. And the last 2 weeks, they gave up 10 points to Tyler Conklin in a 5 for 50 game, and then 6 catches for 54 yards against the Giants to Darren Waller. And honestly, if you can get 10, 11 points out of your tight end, I think that's a great week. And then not only that, but Zach Ertz for Josh Dobbs has been getting week 1, 10 targets, 6 catches for 21 yards. And then week 2, 8 targets, 6 catches for 56 yards. So I think we get another stat line like that out of Zach Ertz, if not even a little bit better if they have to concentrate more on him. And Josh Dobbs has been looking for him a lot. So Ertz is the number 7 tight end through so far through the season. And I think he puts up another 12 points against Dallas. So I like Zach Ertz a lot this week. And probably, honestly, I like Zach Ertz moving forward for the season, to be honest. So let's go ahead and move on to our sit at tight end. Who you got at your sit at tight end, Josh?
All right. I got Gerald Everett for the Chargers. Donald Parham ran more routes than Everett did last week. Parham had 17. Everett had 15. So they're splitting as tight ends, and I don't want any part of tight ends that are splitting routes and targets. Everett, let's see, he got 6 targets through 2 games this year.
Yep.
And also, the Vikings only allowed 41 yards to tight end so far in the first 2 games. So they're pretty good against the tight end. So you split the carries and going against a good team against a tight end. I don't want no part of that.
Completely agree. 100% there with you. And honestly, tight end, like we've said before, such a kind of a barren wasteland, I guess you could say, for tight ends. But I completely agree with you there. I don't want any part of the tight. And honestly, they've got so many weapons on that team. I think tight ends just kind of go by the wayside for them. But
Yeah.
yeah,
He had a few good games last year, but that
Yep.
was because of all the injuries to the wide
That's right.
receivers.
That's right.
And they didn't have a lot to throw to. So
Yep.
he ended up having a few good games, but you just can't go with a tight end that's splitting routes.
No, definitely not. And then we're gonna keep on rolling on with Clay sit at tight end, and this is a big one. Because considering the ranks, let's see, he's ranked in the top 5, but Clay says that you should sit Dallas Goedert this week. And I can't really complain because he's been very underwhelming so far this year. Week 1 had 0 catches with 1 target. And then week 2, he did a lot better, 7 targets, 6 catches for 22 yards against Minnesota. And then this week he's going against Tampa Bay, but Tampa Bay's given up some points to tight ends. They gave up 11 catches for 67 yards to Hawkinson in week 1, and then last week against Chicago they only gave up 4 for 38 to Cole Kmet. But Clay's thinking that Dallas Goedert's not going to have a great game at Tampa Bay this week. I really can't argue with him either way. You know, I feel like Clay's got a vendetta against Dallas Goedert. I don't think he's liked him since the season started. But
and he's a big Eagles fan.
Yeah, I guess man Goddard must have dropped a pass that he really needed. He thought or something. I don't know. He lost a bet, but yeah, I mean Goddard's going against a defense that they could allow it, but honestly, they really aren't targeting him as much as they have in the past. So I can't really argue with it. But that's Clay's pick to sit is Dallas Goedert. And then moving on to my pick to sit, and that's going to be David Njoku for Cleveland. Going up against a Tennessee defense that honestly has been really good at slowing the game down and slowing other teams down with it. They're really good at the run defense, but also they're not too bad at tight end defense. They're 13th against the tight ends, and then really David Njoku hasn't been that successful as it is. In the first week, he only had 4 points, and then the second week he had 6 points, and he's only got a total of 7 targets all season. So, and then last week he had 6 points, but he had 4 for 48, but he had a fumble. So that kind of took away from that. But the Cleveland offense honestly just seems to be struggling, and I feel like this is going to be one of them lower scoring games. Maybe a 14-10 or, something crazy like that. And I also just feel like David Njoku's not as involved in the offense as he has been in the past. And honestly, you could argue that's kind of a Deshaun Watson thing because he had tight ends in Houston, and he really didn't ever utilize them when he was in Houston. So, and right now, David Njoku's max targets for a game is 4. And that was last week. So yeah, I think I'm out on Njoku. I need to see him used more before I'm going to stick him in there. There's just better options that are available, like Hunter Henry or Sam Laporta or one of those other guys, and then maybe one of our sleepers that we're going to talk about here in a minute. So I think I'm out on Njoku. And so, yeah, I don't know if you got anything else to add that, or we go ahead and roll in our sleepers.
No, I'm good.
Yeah. All right. Well, who you got at sleeper there, Josh?
All right. So this is a guy that people might not even know the name. Dallas Cowboys tight end Jake Ferguson.
Yep.
He's actually been used and involved in the passing game for the Cowboys, which we know Dak likes to throw to the tight end. He had 11 targets and a scoring touchdown the last 2 games. Arizona has been bad against the tight end. No team has allowed more touchdowns or fantasy points to tight ends since the start of last season than Arizona. They're horrible. They were almost a fade every week last week if you had a tight end play against Arizona, and they're continuing that this year. Yep. So I mean, if it's pretty deep sleeper, but if you just need somebody and can't find anybody, he'd probably be worth a shot.
And he's very athletic tight end. That's what a lot of people don't realize. He's more athletic than Dalton Schultz was. And Schultz was a lot better blocker. He was there when Schultz was there last year, and he actually filled in one game for Schultz when he was out and caught a touchdown pass. But he filled in. Schultz was a lot better blocker, which is why he got a lot more field time. But I like the pick a lot. I really thought, honestly, in week 1 he had 7 targets. And I really thought after that, I was watching him real close because I felt like he was going to have a lot bigger year. But he only had 4 targets last week against the Jets, who have a really good defense, by the way. But then now he's going up against an Arizona defense that's pretty terrible and tight end, like Josh just said. So I think this is a great pick right there for a sleeper. And then as far as Clay's sleeper is Dalton Kincaid. The highly touted tight end from Buffalo, which Buffalo, the 2 tight end heralding team. But Dalton Kincaid for them has been fairly good for them so far this year, honestly. 4 for 26 in week 1, but then last week had 6 targets, 5 catches for 43 yards. And believe it or not, as minimal as that sound, that gets him to the number 11 tight end on the year. So, and then now this week, going up against the Washington Redskins, who, I mean, I don't know where Clay was going with this, but last week did not allow a single catch to a tight end in Denver. But then in week 1, allowed 8 catches for 44 yards to Arizona, which most of that was against Zach Ertz. So I think really where Clay's going here is that he just thinks Buffalo's offense is going to be rolling against Washington's defense. And I don't think he's probably going to be wrong about that. And I think he thinks that Kincaid's got a good chance to maybe fall in the end zone. So not a bad pick there. And then my sleeper at tight end is Taysom Hill for the Saints. And a lot of people are like, oh, yeah, Taysom Hill. Well, I forgot, and a lot of people forget that he's tight end eligible. And heck, he comes in at quarterback and ends up running the ball. Last week, ran the ball 9 times for 75 yards after Jamal Williams left the game. And honestly, that's where I'm going with this because he's a good chance to possibly get you a touchdown in the red zone. Now, he was limited in practice on Wednesday with a knee injury, but I think that was just kind of maintenance related and to take some of the load off because he ran the ball so many times this past week. But with Williams probably being out, Tony Jones had a decent day, and Kendre Miller's just now coming back off his injury. I think there's a good chance that they're going to work Hill into the offense some more than they did last week. And now that Williams is for sure out, they can game plan to use Taysom Hill even more than they did last week. So for somebody that's not really a traditional tight end but qualifies at the position, and then not only that, just to use the Green Bay statistic against running backs because Taysom Hill's probably going to be running the ball more than pass catching as a tight end. They're 29th against running backs, and they gave up 172 yards last week against Atlanta. So, and we've seen Taysom Hill run the ball. He runs violently. And for a team that gave up 172 yards last week, I think there's a good chance that he has another decent week running the ball. I mean, if he gets 10 rushes, there's no reason to seem to think we can't see 60 yards and touchdown. So,
and
I think
honestly,
he's a sneaky loophole.
For the Saints to be able to win this game, I think we're going to need Taysom to have a big game.
Yeah, definitely. So I like him a lot at tight end. And that's pretty much going to wrap up our tight ends and our positional players. Sorry, I was trying to hold that one back. I'm mowed today. Bad mistake for the pod. But anyway, so let's jump on in. I just got a couple streamers at defense, Josh.
All right, go for it.
So one, there's really not many, but the number one is Kansas City against Chicago, just for the same reason we talked about. Justin Fields, turning the ball over a fair amount. turning the ball over a fair amount, and with Kansas City's defense being a lot better than we anticipated this year. So I like them a lot, and they're at Kansas City, which we've also talked about. It's a tough place to play. So like them a lot. And then also I like Jacksonville at home against Houston. I know CJ Stroud's been throwing the ball a lot, fairly successful offense, but Jacksonville's defense has been pretty successful in itself with a fair amount of sacks and turnovers this year. So I like Jacksonville's chances to get some turnovers and maybe a touchdown against Houston. And then a couple streaming kickers. If you're interested in some guys that are owned in less than about 50% of leagues, Cameron Dicker for the Chargers going up against Minnesota at Minnesota in the Dome, so you don't have to worry about any weather. And then also Cameron Dicker plays in a dome-like stadium, so he might be somebody to hang on to. And then Nick Folk for the Tennessee Titans playing at Cleveland, but Nick Folk is, I believe, the number one kicker in fantasy football currently, and owned in less than, I think. Let's see. Oh, I lied. He's tied for number one.
Jake Elliott. Is Jake Elliott up there?
He is number 4 technically because there's 3 tied for number 1. The San Francisco rookie Jake Moody is number 1 with 28. Nick Folk's number 1 with 28, and Brett Maher for the Rams is number 1 with 28. And then Jake Elliott is number 4, but he's got 27. So
I've
almost
got Elliott in 3 of my 4 leagues.
Yeah,
he's done pretty good.
Yep, and but Nick Folk is only owned in 12% of leagues, and Brett Maher is owned in 11% of leagues. So both of them. Brett Maher's at Cincinnati, Nick Folks is at Cleveland, but both of them are great streaming options that have been putting up tons of points this year. And we all know a kicker can win you your league. I mean, when you're weak, no doubt. So not a position to strictly overlook, and not a terrible position to stream every week. So, but that pretty much wraps up. Anything else you want to add, Josh?
No, I guess that's about it. Everybody, good luck this week.
Good luck. We appreciate everybody listening. Please remember to like, subscribe, download, and give us your feedback on all your podcast applications of choice. We really appreciate everybody listening. And y'all remember, keep chasing that trophy.